Welcome to Public. I am your host, Kinsey Grant, and today we are talking about how one streaming platform is leaning into the business of live sports to a considerable amount of success. That platform is Fubo TV, and today I am joined by its CEO, David Gandler. David, welcome to Public. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I'm excited to have you. We were just chatting before we hit record here that it's a busy day for you today. You guys just reported earnings, and I think it makes a lot of sense to start with the Q3 report that you just put out. We'll give a brief recap, and then I'll ask you a couple questions about it. But the Q3 earnings that you just posted, total revenue up 43% compared to a year ago. Fubo tallied a record number of paid subscribers at just under 1.5 million. Average revenue per user in North America was up 17% to a record, and gross margins improved by almost 9 percentage points to 6%. This is a lot of really good news for the company. I'm curious what you attribute the growth to. Tell me a little bit about how you got here.
Yeah, so I think, we have been very straightforward in our guidance since our IPO. We've stated over and over again is that the market is moving in our direction, which is towards the aggregation space. People want one app where they can get all of their content in a very personalized way and at the best possible price. And so, we've continued to sort of develop our business in that direction. And, we've branded ourselves as a sports first platform. And as you can see from our continued execution, that double digit growth across every KPI, including on the bottom line. And I think that, I think this quarter really demonstrates the success of the platform.
It's interesting to bring up this idea of aggregation. We've heard it referred to at various points as this sort of rebundling. We had the unbundling, and now we're sort of leaning more into this idea of rebundling, to your point, at the best possible price. Tell me a little bit about the consumer behavior in terms of that aggregation. What are people really looking for? And how does that differ from maybe what we had been looking for in the last decade or so?
Yeah, well, everything in my view is cyclical. I'll start with Amazon. I mean, they disrupted retail and then they ended up buying Whole Foods. And now they're in the retail business. And so the same thing is happening in television. I think what you're seeing is that people are tired of friction and fragmentation, and they're very much looking for a, one user interface that brings in all of the content that people like. In a very friendly environment, and one that leverages data to ensure that people are able to actually catch the content that matters most to them. So I think from that respect, we've been very focused on ensuring that we have the maximum amount of content. We have over 50,000 sporting events, and based on what you're hearing from other media companies, it's clear that they are now also focused on ensuring that their content is available on platforms like ours.
Yeah, and this idea of ensuring that consumers can get the content that they actually want to see that really matters to them is something that I think a lot of tech companies have, quite frankly, struggled with at times to ensure that the algorithms that they're putting into place are actually getting people the content that they want to consume. And so with that in mind, I want to hear a little bit about your perspective on the sort of broader competitive landscape, especially as it pertains to some big tech players who have certainly put their hat into the ring in live sports and sports broadcasting. We've got some heavy competitive pressure from the likes of YouTube TV. They've invested $14 billion over 7 years for the NFL Sunday Ticket package. Apple putting $2.5 billion in for MLS rights. Amazon, $10 billion for Thursday Night Football. The list kind of goes on and on. So first question with all of this in mind, talk to me a little bit about the appeal for consumers for something like Fubo as opposed to some of these competitive, bigger tech rivals who are entering the streaming space, especially in sports. How do you compete with these big tech players?
Yeah, this has been the question I think we've been getting asked since 2015, since Facebook attempted to acquire Major League Baseball rights. Look, the answer is always the same. We have a very strong user experience. Our brand and product resonate very well with young consumers. Let's not forget, we also spend about $1 billion, just north of $1 billion on content as well. Obviously, it's not the 4 or the 2 or the 10 billion that you mentioned, but this September, I think, really speaks to our ability to execute against that, where a company like YouTube TV which not only has invested heavily into the Sunday Ticket, but if you think about the level of promotion and discounting, I mean, I've seen discounts that range from, a preseason, which was about 30 to 40%, to I think I've seen offers with third-party services that are, closer to 80 or 90% discounts. So, and then on top of that, just the heavy ad marketing budget that they've put against really the NFL. And still, we've been able to achieve a tremendous number of net additions in the quarter. So that really speaks to our value proposition here in the market. I think after that type of competition in September, I really feel good about our position going forward. And we are talking to different partners that have expressed interest in many different types of ways to work with us that we're now exploring. So I'm very comfortable and very confident about our ability to compete. And let's not forget, all of the major rights are exclusive to media companies, at least particularly as it relates to the NFL, for the next 10 years. So, we have ample amount of time, to continue to grow our business and, potentially participate in some of these auctions.
Is there any one that catches your eye the most as a company for, to go after those rights?
Well, we don't have to, because we have, all of the NFL rights except for Thursday Night Football and Sunday Ticket. We never had Sunday Ticket, so we never, and I think I've also said this at the previous earnings call, is that we didn't anticipate for Sunday Ticket to have a major impact on the business. And as you can see from our Q3 results, that has been accurate. But we're very excited about Q4. As you know, we're one of the largest streaming platforms that cater towards regional sports fans, which are some of the most avid sports fans in the country. And the start of the basketball and NHL seasons are very important to us, and we think we have some differentiation there, and we'll continue to sort of push forward in Q4.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to hear your perspective on what makes sports so enticing in the first place. You mentioned that regional sports fans specifically can be very passionate and very eager to consume content about their team of choice. But I've been covering the space for a while, for many years now. I remember when we first started using the two words streaming wars together, so much of it was around sort of like original, prestige, scripted, HBO style content. Sports was always sort of the next frontier that we couldn't quite crack that nut. Like there was some sort of disconnect. And it seems now that in terms of streamers and streaming platforms, that has really dissipated. People are getting a lot more used to consuming sports via streaming instead of via traditional cable or what have you. So tell me a little bit about how that transition has happened and what specifically makes sports so intriguing from a streaming business perspective, but also from a consumer's perspective.
Yeah, well, I think what's really compelling about sports and streaming is that, prior to streaming, a lot of the sports were on cable networks or broadcast networks. And all of these sports were basically inside of linear feeds. And so the difference between streaming and linear television is now that you can consume a greater breadth of games that are, being played simultaneously, which you couldn't do before. So think about if you were watching a World Cup game on ABC, you couldn't watch one or two other games that were happening at the same time. So streaming has really opened up the ability for people to get more depth and breadth of sports programming. And then I would say the other piece of that is just you see the innovation in streaming that allows people to get more value out of those sports, and things like 4K, which Fubo has been first to market with, and multi-view, which is another hot feature that I think some of our competitors are now jumping on as a key feature for people to really enhance their viewing experience or their betting experience or their fantasy sports experience. So I think that those are the two major areas that I think are really helping that grow. And I think the last piece is just being able to find things, right? So on the Fubo platform, it's very easy to access your favorite teams. We typically, bubble this content up for people so that they know where they can find it without having to search. The problem, however, in streaming right now is, as you mentioned in your earlier question, is around the fact that some content is moving onto different platforms. And so I think ultimately most companies will not be able to maximize the monetization of those sports because casual fans want access to. You saw that very recently with Thursday Night Football, where the ratings last year, weren't able to sort of meet the previous linear, ratings numbers. And so, my view is that ultimately aggregation wins. People like to consume all of their sports on one platform, and we'll continue to innovate around features to allow them to, get more value out of those bundles.
All right, absolutely. Now, one final point that I want to hit on here before we wrap up, as it pertains to Q3. Let's talk about the ads business. Fubo's Q3 North American ad revenue grew 34%. We've heard a lot of talk over the last year and a half about the big bad recession that may or may not be coming. About just general economic slowdown. Oftentimes when things do slow down in the economy, those marketing budgets are the thing that gets pinched first. So talk to me a little bit about the ads business and how you've maintained that growth sort of given everything going on.
Yeah, well, let me just remind you very quickly. Last quarter on our earnings call, we were the first out of many media companies to say that we had seen green shoots in July, where I think most investors felt that may not be the case. And as you just rightfully mentioned, we saw a 34% increase year over year. I would attribute that to two things. One is our team. We have built a phenomenal team. I've been very focused personally on putting together the right team at Fubo. We've increased the size of that team, and we moved their focus from just programmatic, non-guaranteed business to more of a direct sales initiative, as well as programmatic guaranteed. That business has grown tremendously, allowing us to really drive a ton of value. So we're going to continue to see that in the fourth quarter. Of course, I think we're a little bit more conservative this quarter relative to last year as a tough comp. I think we had a trifecta. Last year we had a World Cup. We had a very strong political season. And then just on top of that, you had our typical NFL season that creates a lot of pressure on the inventory. But I think things are definitely moving in the right direction. And the addition of the fast channels onto our platform really allow us to access a lot more inventory versus the 2 to 3 minutes of time, which, by the way, is a huge difference between Fubo and cable, which we just have, we can add as many channels as we like. We don't have any limitations to bandwidth. And so that, I think, will allow us to really drive more consumer viewership. And at the same time, that drives ad inventory, more data, and ultimately better campaigns for our advertising partners. And the last thing I'll say on that front is why we have been so focused on direct, and I've said this many times, is that the whole promise of programmatic was about efficiency. And the reality is it's proven not to be as efficient as people like. If you're a professional investor or retail investor watching this, I mean, it's a very simple way to explain it. 10 years ago, there were two ad operations teams, one at the publisher level, which let's just say Fubo, and another at the agency level. And so there were two ad ops teams that were working together to put campaigns up for advertisers. Today, you have the publisher that has an ad ops team, the agency has an ad ops team, the data provider has an ad ops team, the supply side platform has an ad ops team, the demand side platform has an ad ops team. So this has become really inefficient, and I think a lot of the intermediaries have taken too much money out of the ecosystem, and our job is to take that back, number one, and number two, share that back with the advertiser and the agency directly, and that seems to have bolstered our advertising numbers, and we're going to continue to message that as we go out to market.
Yeah. All right. Very, very interesting insight. David, this has been so wonderful. Thank you for taking time out of what I imagine is a very busy couple of days to join us and tell me a little bit more about your business. It's been so wonderful to hear all this from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thanks. Thank you once again to our guest, David Gandler, CEO at Fubo TV. And thank you to all of you for listening. I'm Kinsey Grant, and I'll see you next time.